everybody. I'm Craig Shriver, Director of the Murtha Cancer Center. Welcome to the Cancer Moonshot Community Conversations hosted by the Department of Defense. Our Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs is our host, and she will begin with opening remarks. Ms. Mullen.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today for the Defense Department's Cancer Cabinet Community Conversation. This is an opportunity to highlight the excellent work DoD is doing to support the Cancer Moonshot 2.0, and in particular, the excellent work of the Murtha Cancer Center. Everyone here assembled today knows how terrible an enemy cancer is. We have all lost someone to cancer. We also have known someone who has survived and overcome it. People like Chief Felder, Lieutenant Commander Jabra, Ms. Deloitte Spade, and Sergeant Christian, who are joining us here today, and we will hear their stories. It's so vital we hear your perspective on the work that DoD is doing and what it should be doing in coordination with our other federal partners, academia, and the private sector. I want to give my special thanks to Dr. Shriver for convening and hosting this session today. Craig, we met many years ago, and it's my honor to be with you again today. You are truly a champion, and I'm so excited about the work that Cancer Moonshot 2.0 is doing, which will reignite and reinvigorate, and how you'll be leading that effort. Our conversation will focus today on health equity and military relevant environmental exposures. This topic couldn't be more relevant today. As we all know, cancer touches everyone, yet how we treat those who have cancer and their outcomes have wide disparities. Cancer is not unique in that regard. Within the United States, there are wide health inequities driven by race, geography, and income. For that reason, addressing cancer's inequities is one of the key focuses of the Cancer Moonshot 2.0. DoD has a role to play here. Because the military health system has universal healthcare access for its beneficiaries, we see fewer disparities in health outcomes. At Murtha, Black patients perform better than their counterparts in the civilian sectors for many cancers treated. I hope our conversation here today will inform the national conversation going forward. Military environmental exposures are another potential driver of cancer and is therefore relevant to DoD's contribution to the Cancer Moonshot. In the military health system, we're working to identify the links between environmental exposures and health outcomes, including cancer. I hope our conversation today can frame this important work. So I think this will be a valuable discussion, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you again to the participants and for all who are watching either virtually or in person. Dr. Shriver, I turn over to you.
So as was stated in Ms. Mullen's opening remarks, there's a twofold effort to this 1 hour. The first half hour will be focused on equity for healthcare and how the Department of Defense has addressed and has shown outcomes and equity across the healthcare system, regardless of multiple factors. And then the second half will be on the environmental aspect and with our partners who are with us here today representing the VA and the NIEHS. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. G. Lin, one of our senior epidemiologists in Murtha, who's going to briefly describe some of the conclusions of outcome studies regarding equity in the military healthcare system. Dr. Lin.
Thank you, Dr. Shriver, for the opportunity to contribute. I'm Seileen from Murtha Cancer Center Research Program. I'd like to share our studies on cancer survival comparison between military health system population and U.S. general population. Access to health care has a large impact on cancer survival. However, in the U.S. general population, healthcare access is not equal to everyone, and this disparity affects cancer care and therefore survival. In contrast to this unequal healthcare access in the general population, the military health system provides universal health care to beneficiaries. Therefore, in MHS, barriers to health care are minimized or reduced, and survival is expected to be better. Based on this hypothesis, we investigated whether MHS cancer patients have better survival than patients from the U.S. general population as a result of universal and equal health care. The data resources we used are from DoD's Cancer Registry and also National Cancer Institute's Surveillance, Epidemiology, and End Results Registry, the SEER registry. Our study results showed that in the overall comparison of MHS cancer patients with those in the general population, we found consistently across all cancer sites that we studied, MHS patients had better survival than patients from the general population. Specifically for lung cancer, MHS cancer patients had 22% lower deaths than patients from the general population. And for breast cancer, 24% lower risk of death. For prostate cancer, an overall of 26% lower risk of death for MHS patients compared to general population. And for colon cancer, the reduced risk of death was 18%. Brain cancer, similar results. We found better survival for MHS patients with 26% reduction in the risk of death. In addition to the overall comparison, which include everyone, we also did the by race. We found that the improved survival for the MHS compared to general population was much larger for Blacks than whites. For lung cancer, MHS Black patients had 33% lower risk of death than Black patients in the general population. In contrast, the death reduction was only 20% for white patients. For breast cancer, similar results. MHS Black women had 37% lower risk of death, much larger than 22% for whites. And in brain cancer, we found similar results. Blacks had 51% lower risk of death, but white patients had only 18%. And for both colon cancer and prostate cancers, the likelihood of death also tended to be much lower for Blacks than whites. We have two major conclusions from the multiple cancers. First is MHS cancer patients had better survival than patients from the US general population across the cancers that we studied. This suggests that universal health care improves cancer survival. And second, the better survival was more evident among Blacks across all cancer sites, suggesting Blacks may benefit more from the universal health care. This implies that universal health care access is important to reduce cancer health disparity in society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lin, for that powerful data-driven results showing equity of outcomes in the military healthcare system. The patients, however, are the ones affected by this. And so today with us, and thank you to all of you, we have 4 patients representing the Department of Defense military healthcare system. And each of them is going to speak in turn on how cancer has affected them professionally and personally, and their hopes for the future certainly are surrounding Moonshot 2. Starting off will be Sergeant Michael Christian, U.S. Marine Corps.
Sergeant Michael G. Christian. I am 6672 in the United States Marine Corps, which is aviation logistics. So long story short, I work around aircraft for a living, handling it both the economic side of the parts as well as the finances. I was recently deployed in Saudi Arabia from December to February. It was supposed to be until the end of March, but I was diagnosed with B-cell leukemia February 22nd while deployed in Saudi Arabia. Cancer affected me professionally and personally. I would say it threw a big wrench in my career because I was at this weird point where I didn't just join, and I certainly had a long way to go. So I was at that middle point. Now I got to figure out, are they going to, I'm asking questions to myself, are they going to let me stay in? Am I able to stay in? Like things like health, or what am I going to do about finances? I have a wife. I just recently was married like 6 months ago, and she's a Japanese national. So, if I lose my job, now I got to think about, financial security. So there's a lot of things that cancer kind of threw a big wrench into. But I definitely will say that my chain of command, the medical teams, everyone's been really supportive on making me not feel scared on what's my next step. They even helped me get to my next step. So that's definitely something that I'm grateful for. And especially being at my age, I'm 24. I've like the professional and personal, they kind of work hand in hand with me. My professional life right now is my personal life because I'm at that age where I'm trying to build something. So personally, it didn't affect me that much. I mean, I still have the same friends, still got the same, interests. I would be lying if I say I wasn't really scared about the diagnosis, more so about the things I have to do now to handle this diagnosis. I will say on a personal level, I lied, is that I used to be a really healthy person. So I noticed a change. Like I feel terrible all the time. I get the shakes, like I try to just cut a tomato and I can't even hold a knife without my hands cramping. So there's obviously things that are that I am really uncomfortable with, but it's a growing pain. And like I said, my medical team is there and they're saying, most of these things are just temporary. So just, fight the fight and we're here with you. So that's great. And I guess hopes for the future is to stay in as possible. I had a realistic package literally en route when I got diagnosed with cancer. So it was kind of one of those weird things, but if not, then pursue computer science when I get out. So.
Thank you, Sergeant. We have data in Murtha Cancer Center looking at active duty treated for cancer. 50% of active duty are able to stay on after successful cancer treatment if they want to. So we look forward to your continued service. Next is Melinda Deloach-Spade.
Good evening, everyone. And my name is Melinda Deloach-Spade. I am the wife of a Coast Guard veteran. And I work for the Environmental Protection Agency, where I'm the director of the resource management staff. And I've been in the federal government for 34 years. And let's see the next one. How has cancer affected me professionally and personally? Professionally, it hasn't really affected me because I was able to work throughout my treatment. I did 6 rounds of very extensive, very strong chemotherapy. But if it wasn't for the unending support of my management and those who came to assist and step in when I couldn't, I have one person that just steps in when I can't be there for staff and staff stepping up and supporting me. But I've been in the government for 34 years. So it hasn't really affected me. And then we've been home for 2 years. So I was able to continue my treatment as well as work virtually. And I'm continuing to work virtually because of the medications that I'm on. It affects my immune system. So my job has allowed me, although some are going back, they allowing me to continue my virtual position. And personally, I am considered the Energizer Bunny in my family and all the organizations that I belong to. American Legion, Keep Reserve Association, Blacks in Government, my sorority, National Council. I'm in a lot of stuff. And I hold positions in a lot of things. And to actually have to stop doing what I was doing, serving my community, that's my spiritual gift of service. And to actually not be able to do that and to not be able to be with my family the way they're used to being with me and seeing me and my energy and doing everything. But if it had not been for my husband, of course, my Lord, my husband, my mom, my children, my cousin, I don't know if I could have gotten to do this without them. And I cannot, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my medical team at Walter Reed Gyno-Oncology. Amazing. They were just amazing. And they continue to be. My nurse navigator, Stephanie and Sarah, they're awesome. I can't say enough about them. And my hopes for the future is to continue on a healthy journey. To be here. My grandson turned 1 year old Saturday. I want to be here to see him graduate high school. I was diagnosed with stage 3 fallopian / ovarian cancer. And I'm hearing in the era that fallopian is kind of a mystery. My entire cancer is a mystery. There's no studies, there's no treatment, what's the word? this is one of the things that gets me with the cancer treatment. You know, the words, you get the boggy brain sometimes. But so that's my goal, to see my son graduate high school next year and to eventually see my grandson graduate high school. So that's my, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Chief Charles Felder.
Hi, thank you. Chief Warrant Officer Fielder. I'm a technical warrant officer assigned here in the National Capital Region. About 2 years ago, I was assigned to South Korea on an unaccompanied tour. And as I arrived there, it was right as COVID began to kick off. And so I remember getting the orders for Korea. I got my passport in order. I'm going to use Korea as the jump off spot. I'm going to all these different exotic places in Asia, Singapore. I was just, because friends who were there previously, we went everywhere. And so immediately when I got there, Korea, I went into lockdown. So we took the passport, and it's as blank as it was now as it was when I bought it or when I got it. So, but and then kind of was assigned to COVID response, which was significantly stressful, where you were in charge of coordinating for signature for the commander, everybody coming in and out of Korea. And so to include spouses, dogs, and everything. So it was a 24-hour position, and I embraced the opportunity to depart Korea, to return back home to my duty station. And so it's just a routine physical. When I arrived at West Point, I got the physical, and they said, hey, you look good. No problems there, but your PSA is a little high. I'm sure it's nothing. Just get it checked out when you're signing to your new duty station, which I did. Went to the new duty station in Fort Belvoir. And it's a little high. We're going to test it again. It's a little high. We're going to send you over to Walter Reed, get that checked. I'm sure it's nothing. And sure enough, I went over to Walter Reed, and they looked at it, and it's going to set you up with an MRI. So it's very methodical. I appreciate that. There was a system in place. Got the MRI and sat down, and she says, there's a little something there. We're going to have the doctor call you. And I just remember the phone call. He kind of, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, okay, I'm doing fine.
One second.
So what you been up to? Okay. And then he kind of eased into it. We found some cancer there, and we want you to come in and we're going to discuss options and so forth. And I went in, and based on, I'm very grateful and thankful to God that it was low grade. And so we adopted what's called active surveillance, which was not fun, but it could have been worse, which means biopsies on an occasional basis. And so on the second biopsy, there was some slight movement, and the doctor determined, I don't really trust that. Let's talk about other options. And so I opted to get it totally removed, and the doctor concurred, and all the specialists said, I think that's a good course of action based on where you are. And so all along, it was very methodical. I had a buy-in. There was nobody steamrolling me into, this is what, you better do this, you better do that. And so I was very appreciative of the expertise. My doctor, what's his name?
Chestnut.
Dr. Chestnut is brilliant. I mean, he's been everywhere. He's able to speak historically based on his knowledge and his experience. I'm glad he's there. I'm glad he's going to be there for a while. And so I opted to have it removed. And so it was, I had a follow-up not too long ago, and things look very good. Things are still on the low end of the scale, and it seems to be everybody's very optimistic that this has been taken care of. Early detection was the key. I don't know if I was not a service member, not required to do these annual physicals, not having it be free, so to speak, where you can just go right in. I don't know if I'd be in the same position because, generations before the theory is you go to hospital's a place you go to die. you don't go to get well. And so my father and all these folks, they just never went to the hospital for anything. But I just went as a routine look, and sure enough, there it was. How this has affected me professionally, I would be lying to say that the focus has been affected. And I can see how this would be a readiness issue. There are expectations of every service member to perform. However, when the doctor calls you and says you got cancer, everything shifts. You don't think about, what you got to do at work. You don't think about, you're hanging in there, you're giving 100%, but your mind's not. And so I've had a very supportive chain of command. Look, take the time off, do what you got to do. As she mentioned earlier, we've been home for COVID, so that helped. There's no urgency. There was a ability not to go into the office. And so it was things seemed to fall into place. Personally, there were days you just don't want to do anything. You just want to veg out. And you have to guard against that because you can slip into this funk where this time bomb's sitting there. I was under active surveillance for a while, and it's like, okay, what's this thing gonna do? And I knew in my mind already that as soon as I get the opportunity to have this thing removed, that's what I'm gonna do. And the doctor says, hey, I think you need to consider that. I was like, hey, it's already considered. Let's do it. And so for personally, you can get into I just don't want to do anything. But it's as she mentioned, it's good to stay busy. Get your mind occupied, because sometimes things aren't as bad as your mind will take you to being. Google is not your friend. I'm sorry. You Google, hey, what is this? And you get the worst case scenario and everything. Oh my God, it's worse. And so my hopes for the future, to wind this up, is that I'm blessed to be with the ability to have the opportunity to be in a position to retire. And so that's what I'm absolutely gonna do. And so I think somebody mentioned yeah, I've got a granddaughter now. It looks very good to drive her to daycare now. So that's probably the thing that I'm looking forward to doing. So that's my story.
Lieutenant Commander Jennifer Jabara.
Yes, I'm Lieutenant Commander Jennifer Jabara. I'm a USPHS Commissioned Corps Officer. I'm currently stationed at the National Institutes of Health. Just as many of my counterparts here, found myself on a journey that none of us wanted to be, and now found myself in a conversation that's the result of a conversation that none of us ever wanted to have. I find it interesting, each of us can pinpoint the date and the person, right, who told us that news. For myself, it was an interesting journey that brought me here to this table today. I'm actually a nurse by profession and have spent my career inspired by my grandfather's cancer journey, caring for cancer patients in a variety of ways, from the bedside to the National Institutes of Health doing research, and now find myself actually working for the Office of Nursing Professional Development, helping to empower the next generation of providers. And over the last year, had a lot of life changes. In December, welcomed my son Joshua, the second of our two children, after what was really a very challenging pregnancy, highlighted by a couple of very exciting trips to the emergency room, and one with sirens blowing, ambulance going, and ultimately delivered him, and along the way had a few signs that maybe something else was going on. After delivery, realized ultimately what we found was a tumor had developed alongside my pregnancy, and took a little while after delivery to prepare for that biopsy and ultimately receive the results. February 25th was my conversation. It was a Friday evening. Thankfully, the team, both from the gynecology clinic and then gynecology oncology, were very quick to make phone calls as they realized the results of that biopsy were going to be available online. And no one wanted a new mother finding out over the weekend that she had cancer for what up until that point everyone was really confident was a benign mass of some sort. So when we think about how has cancer affected you, I find it remarkable that we're all sitting here trying to encapsulate that in a 5-minute blurb, because the truth is, words could never do justice for what this has done. I think many of us are trying very hard to put on that happy face and say that personally and professionally, I think I've heard someone say, it hasn't affected us personally, but I know you're lying. Because it has, right? The minute you hear those words, you have cancer, everything changes. It changes for you, it changes for your family. In my case, it changes for my 2 kids. And what does that look like? Well, one, it was the end of my maternity leave, and I was supposed to go back to work on the same Monday that I had to go show up in the clinic and say, I guess I have cancer. What is this going to look like? By the way, I'm active duty and I have a whole list of things that I had planned on doing professionally this year, and a great boss waiting for me to come back to a team that's already been kind of picking up the slack while I've had this difficult maternity leave. And met with Dr. Phippen and the team. We talk about how streamlined the service was. So I was diagnosed Friday, February 25th, in the office Monday morning. I was in the OR having a radical surgery by March 10th, which we had all been really optimistic was going to hopefully put an end to the cancer journey, and hopefully that would be the end of the happily ever after of my story. Unfortunately, recognizing the fact that I had just gone through the traumatic miracle of delivering my son, there was a lot of concern that I probably delivered him through the tumor. And on reflection through the labor and delivery team, the team at Walter Reed, as well as the incredible network that they made available to me through Johns Hopkins and Dana-Farber, ultimately the decision was made, the risk that there was potential spread elsewhere was too great. So I, a little different than my friends here, I'm leaning on their hope and their optimism from their recent experience. I am still very much in the middle of my journey. I will actually, on Friday, have my simulation as we prepare to start an aggressive regimen of both chemotherapy and radiation, and then some internal radiation following, to ensure that hopefully we eliminate the risk for relapse, so that hopefully I find myself in that 50% that are deemed welcome to come back. And when I think about my hopes for the future, I really hope that the purpose of all of this is not just that we were able to have my son healthily, because we didn't recognize early that this was cancer. We thought it was a benign, strange thing that was happening in pregnancy. You know, I hope that that's one of the things for the future that comes from this, is Josh was going to do some really amazing things for our world. But in addition, I hope that my experience gives me the opportunity at tables just like this to speak to the patient experience in a different way. As a healthcare provider, I kind of laugh at myself now. Maybe that's important as we go through our cancer journey, to be able to laugh at ourselves. Things that I thought were really helpful for my patients, I recognize now maybe were not. And maybe there are some other opportunities to improve the experience. So I really hope that tables just like this, and friends like all of us that are joined here today, are going to be able to give voice to things like we're talking about today, equity, and what our work life looks like, and how do we create those opportunities for both active duty and more so widespread, as we talk about the Moonshot project for patients across the nation, so that hopefully we can have a positive influence in how cancer really emerges for generations to come. When I think about my cancer journey and the inspiration from my grandfather, I can't help but think about this comment that my mom made, and I'm cognizant of the time. When I was younger and decided that I wanted to go into oncology as a nurse, she would joke that I was one of the few people she knew that was trying to put myself out of a job before I was settled. Because in addition to the work I was doing professionally, I spent so much of my time volunteering with the American Cancer Society and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I share that in the sense that one of the things that I've recognized is not just that cancer can happen to anybody, but when we talk about equity, cancer definitely does not discriminate. When you think about who gets cancer, one of my very dear friends from home said, it just doesn't feel right, Jen. You've spent the majority of your life fighting cancer for other people, and now you have this big C diagnosis with a newborn at home and a 3-year-old and a husband that's incredible. And what does this look like? It doesn't discriminate. It happens to people just like us sitting at this table. And it took me a little bit, haven't been on this journey very long, to be fair, but it took me a moment to be able to say those words. And to be honest, I'm sure others probably can share this sentiment, that the first time you had to call someone and say, so I have cancer, is a really difficult conversation, which brings us back to kind of how I opened my couple minutes here, that it's all about conversations. And I really, my hope more than anything for this is that this is just the beginning of a much larger conversation that we'll all continue to come to the table for, so we can make a really great difference. And hopefully we won't need a Moonshot 4 or 5, but we get it done this time.
Thank you, Commander. Well said. Thank you to all of our patients for those powerful stories and your testimonies. So the next half of our conversation will now move into exposures. And so for that, the Department of Defense is partnering with other federal agencies, and we're going to hear from some of those partners with regards to what we are doing in exposure research and what we hope to do in Moonshot 2, as well as what these agencies are doing. So with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Patricia Hastings from VA to start us on.
Well, first I want to say that I am very happy to be here, and it's been a great collaboration over many years with DoD, and we are bringing other people to the table. And Commander, I want to let you know that it is tables like this that will make a huge difference. And we were involved with Moonshot 1, this is Moonshot 2, and I absolutely agree with you. If we can make this Moonshot last, that's the answer. The VA exists to take care of the military members when they have ended their service. And so the whole reason that VA exists is to be that continuum of care, and we're very proud to do it. My office has existed for about 37 years, and we've looked at those things that are military environmental exposures, and these can be many things. It can be the environmental exposures we think of as fuels, it can be the PFAS that we talk about now, it can be heat, cold, vibration, but we have concentrated on those environmental exposures that are chemical and radiologic in nature. And being invited to work with DoD has accelerated some of the work that we're doing. A lot of the work is done by the Office of Research and Development. They're sort of the bench researchers of VA, and my office is the part that looks at the cohorts, does the epidemiologic research, and does that translation of the research into clinical care through the War-Related Illness and Injury Study Center, the Toxic Embedded Fragment Center, and the Depleted Uranium Center. We work with many partners. DoD is probably our closest partner. But we also work with the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, the Agency for Toxic Substance Disease Registry, NIH, among others. And what we want to do is be able to get answers for veterans. In this case, answers in regards to those military environmental exposures and the effect that they may have on cancers. We know that chemicals can have profound effects on the health. Cancer being one of those. We are looking at the health outcomes, we are looking at the clinical care and trying to improve those things. One thing that we're doing with DoD, which will make a great deal of difference, is called the Individual Longitudinal Exposure Record. And that is probably going to be, and I use the term advisedly, a game changer, because it will have an individual record for every service member and let us know where they were, when they were there, and what exposures they may have had. And it's just getting better all the time. Another thing that we're doing is the machine learning, sort of the artificial intelligence, to scan the literature much more quickly to see what is new out there, what is important, and what will make a difference. One of the other things that we are also doing is working with DoD on those cohorts. You know, we have the lists, and thank you very much for those lists, so that we can look at specific areas, specific cohorts, and get down to where they were, when they were there, what exposures they had, and what the implications of that. We have also looked at VBA data for trends, and this is Veterans Benefits Claims data, which will inform us on what things we need to research next, which things look like they could have profound effects on health, including cancer. The new model that we have for looking at presumptions, and that's putting that nexus of an exposure to a health outcome, is including VBA data. Science still reigns supreme, but we know that there are other things out there that we need to look at. And one of the other things that the Secretary has directed is that everyone in VA that provides care to the veteran will have entry-level competence in looking at military environmental exposures. And that will have a profound effect, because a better understanding from the care providers at that basic level is often an entry point into further health care. But to put it into just a small sentence, this table will make a difference, and the jointness and the work that we do collaboratively is really going to make the difference, and I'm proud to be involved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Hastings. Continuing our conversation surrounding environmental exposures and our work at the DoD with other federal agencies and partners is Dr. Warren Casey, the Acting Chief of the Predictive Toxicology Branch of the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shriver. It's really exciting to be here today to talk about a first of its kind project. I think it's probably the first type of collaboration between NIEHS and DoD. And what it attempts to do is to link military exposures of individuals with the subsequent development of cancer. So if we're ever going to meet President Biden's goal of reducing cancer death rates by 50% in 25 years, it's going to involve two things. One is early cancer detection. As Chief Felder mentioned, early cancer detection is a key. If you think of cancer as a forest fire that's ravaging the body, the sooner you can catch it, the easier it is to contain, and the quicker you can put it out. So a lot of effort is being put into just that, early cancer detection. What we're trying to do is go prior to that. Can we provide markers where we can provide assurance or let people know that they are at increased risk for developing cancer because of certain exposures? And if we can develop those markers, we could potentially mitigate the risk, removing them from the exposures, or provide some other options for monitoring them more closely now that they are at risk. Nothing like this has been done yet, and using this Department of Defense resource, which is the serum repository, where they've taken serum samples from active duty service members every 2 years since the late 80s. We now have the ability to identify people that were on active duty and look at the prior 12 to 18 years to see what changed in their bodies and if we can use that information to develop markers of susceptibility or exposure. So we're very excited to start this project with Dr. Shriver and his group.
Thank you, Dr. Casey. Really, we treasure our partnerships with your agencies, and I think, as the President has said, it's going to take an all-of-government approach to get where we want to go, and I know we can do that. Next up to speak is my friend and colleague from the West Coast, so thank you for joining us, Jerry. Jerry Lee, Dr. Jerry Lee, used to work for the NCI under the Office of the Director, now is the Chief Science and Innovation Officer of the Ellison Institute for Transformative Medicine. Dr. Lee.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me and including me on this conversation. And I just want to reiterate, we are definitely at an inflection point. And I also wanted to thank Charles, Jennifer, Melinda, and Michael for sharing your stories, your journeys, because that's the reason I'm thinking about this as an inflection point. How do we really unleash the power of data, and that has been said a few times now, to really achieve the possibility of reducing death rate from cancer by at least 50% over the next 2 decades. And the reason that's important to me, if you now think back 20 years ago, what were we doing? We had the technology capability to use $100 million to sequence one genome, an effort that brought together Department of Energy and the NIH. That was 20 years ago, not 50. And 15 years ago, I had the pleasure, as part of the Cancer Institute, starting a database of high quality data called the Cancer Genome Atlas, where 10,000 patients were molecularly profiled. And that's 15 years ago. 6 years ago, in 2016, certainly had the pleasure, as part of Cancer Moonshot 1.0, working with Dr. Shriver, Dr. Smith, VA, and the NCI to not only take advantage of a lot of these emerging molecular technologies, but more importantly, to apply them in a rigorous longitudinal fashion to an ethnically diverse patient population, using not only research grade, but also clinical grade tests across all cancer types, so that we can continue to build upon that excellence of high quality care that you've heard, and pair that perhaps with high quality data generated by new technologies. And I'd say 6 years later, I'm really proud to see that the Apollo program, the Murtha Cancer Program, are not only pushing and continuing over the past 6 years to realize that program that was presented to former Vice President Biden, current President Biden, but also bringing in new partners like the National Toxicology Program and EPA, so that we could use this network now to build and serve as the foundation to generate the data sets that are needed to address military-related environmental exposures. In my opinion, why is this sort of the best network from my perspective to serve as that foundation? You know, some of the things that Patricia mentioned as well in terms of the individual longitudinal exposure record. You know, we're sitting here thinking about how challenging it might be to transition both for the warfighter, but also for the cancer patient, their DoD and VA records. Now, if you think outside of that ecosystem, and I know Dr. Lin mentioned a little bit about that, the cancer patient on an average might encounter outside the military and VA ecosystem 17 different providers in his or her cancer journey. The amount of lessons learned that the VA and the DoD could provide to help perhaps lower the barrier, lower the pain, lower some of that burden that you heard our survivors shared with us when you hear some of those words. That's 17 providers. And the fact that 85% of cancer patients in the United States are seen in community settings, some of the same settings that perhaps VA and military treatment facilities also serve. That's another place where a network like this could really help inform and really lead these efforts. And last but certainly not least, the fact that, as Patricia mentioned, the ability to take some of this research and bring it into clinical practice guidelines. The DoD and VA has created more of those than any other healthcare network in the United States, because you have 22 years worth of information across 18 million lives in the VA's corporate data warehouse. Combine that with some of the resources that the military has also created for epidemiology that Dr. Lin mentioned. Could you imagine what we could do? And if we could envision, and it's not an if we do this, but when we do this, 25 years later, what types of things we could be saying around this table about military exposure, and what type of data and what type of evidence we could be providing. I could definitely see us not only closing the loop between research and clinical, as I've mentioned, shortening the distance between that, creating truly a longitudinal learning healthcare network. The two L's and the O in the Apollo program is learning and outcome. Let's not forget that. To learn from all of the different parts of your respective journeys, not just treat you as molecules, but really think about how each one of your journeys are unique. And last but certainly not least, honor the hopes and wishes of those patients that over the past 20 years have donated programs such as the Million Veterans Program, the Cancer Genome Atlas Program, the Apollo program, because each one of them, when they provide their samples for profiling, they're actually giving their wishes, their hopes for that next generation. And with that, I'm extraordinarily honored to be continued a partner at the Ellison Institute with the Apollo program, because that is certainly a passion that I continue to carry here. How do we continue to create high quality, useful data and really to inform different journeys, and again, to unleash the power of data to help all the cancer patients, or as many as we can, for the next, hopefully not just 25 years, but beyond that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, and thank you again for your seminal involvement in Cancer Moonshot 1, and really what was the creation of the flagship DoD, NCI, VA research program that is just hitting its stride now, known as Apollo, across our mutual systems, VA and DoD. I want to thank you, Ms. Mullen, and Dr. Smith for your support and being here in person, and all the great support you've given to this effort, and the spotlight by the White House on this problem, I think, and our patients. I just can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your testimony and the courage that I know it takes to do that in an event, in a forum such as this. And we take it personally as our charge to do what you hope that we will do and make the most of this Cancer Moonshot 2 opportunity. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. David Smith, Acting Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Health Affairs, for closing comments, sir.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you to all the participants who are active collaborators on the government side. I think it's very impressive to see the interagency collaboration. It started with Moonshot 1, which within the DoD, VA, NIH family has continued, and as you said, it's just really getting its stride and already has profoundly changed, I think, the community because of that effort. But I'm so pleased that it's being re-energized with the efforts from the White House. And I clearly agree with you. We want this to be the 2.0 and continue until we really do reach the goal, and I hope exceed the goal that the President has set for us. But I want to thank all the inspiring stories we've heard today. I know you all are just representative of all of those that we are trying and so desperately want to be able to continue to help. Your testimonies just help inspire that and that effort. So thank you, Craig, and everybody for putting this on today. I think the successes we've had relative to diversity do show the clear value of access. But I think we clearly all know we have more to do to make it, the ideal system, and hopefully we'll not have the cancer to worry about if we're successful in the end. And clearly on the environmental side, which is part of my passion, and working very closely with a number of the folks at the table, we now have the tools to be able to do and broaden this work to really be able to start matching and seeing whether or not there are exposures. Because we all know our environment is a work industrial environment that has all sorts of potential environmental toxins and exposures. And the ILR that Pat talked about, now this in the next couple of months will have an additional module that allows us to match individuals to exposures, to develop cohorts to actually be able to study them and really look and see whether or not we're doing what we clearly want to do, which is protect our workforce in pursuit of their missions. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It continues to inspire us to advocate for the work that's going on, and again, particularly to our patients who have come, all who have profound public service, and certainly for those that want to continue that, we hope that you'll have that opportunity to do that for a number of years in the future. So, thank you.